Hey guys, welcome to the next episode of the Refuse to Lose podcast. This is our 10th episode and a very special one for me personally. In this episode, I'm chatting with Rugby League legend Preston Campbell, a Dally M medalist with the Sharks and a Premiership winner with the Panthers. But anyone who knows Preston will tell you that his greatest achievements are off-the-field achievements. In this podcast, Preston speaks openly and honestly about his multiple suicide attempts while still playing in the NRL and how he overcame that mental anguish to become one of the most charitable and respected athletes in Australian sport. He also speaks about the kill 'em with kindness mantra he has used to navigate a world that hasn't always been kind to him. Preston has changed the lives of many young men and women around the country, including myself. A program he set up at the Gold Coast Titans gave me my first journalism cadetship and helped me get the job I have now at Channel 9. We also have a bit of fun as well. Preston shares some stories about the many famous people he's met over the years, including the Queen, David Beckham, and the one and only Muhammad Ali. I hope you get as much out of this chat as I did. And remember, if you or anyone you know is struggling to cope, you can contact Lifeline on 13 11 14. Enjoy the chat with Preston Campbell. Preston Campbell, welcome to the Refuse to Lose podcast. It's a pleasure having you on, mate. Do you remember, I don't know if you probably do remember, but 10 years ago, we actually sat down for an interview. I was a uni student. It was the first interview I ever did with a sports star. And here we are 10 years later. I don't know, you probably won't remember that, but I was...
10 years, yeah. Yes. Oh, well, mate, this is the second one we've had. So I remember the first one. I remember fresh face. You're still fresh face, still pretty young.
I don't know about that.
But yeah, you definitely come a long way. But it's good to sit down with you again, mate. See where you're at.
Life's changed a bit for you, mate. In that 10 years, you were still playing back then, and now you're a grandfather. You're just telling me. Yeah.
I've got a granddaughter. She's 7.5 months now. Yeah, beautiful girl. Being a grandparent is an amazing feeling. It's one of those things, you know. You hear a lot of people who are grandparents. They love the fact that they can be with their grandchildren, but also be able to give them back. I don't want to give my granddaughter back. You know, she's so beautiful. But yeah, it has been a long time. There's a fair bit. I've learned a fair bit. When we talk about 10 years ago, 2010, I think it was, we fell one game short of the grand final. In my second last year, the Gold Coast Titans in 2011. I won't talk too much about that. Probably wasn't the best year, for my footy career or for the Gold Coast. The one and only wooden spoon that we've gotten, but it's been quite a journey since finishing football up. Plenty has happened. 10 years ago, well, this year's been the 10-year anniversary of the All-Stars, and I'm still in the community doing some great work, and I'm learning stuff every time I'm out doing something. And look, Rugby League was a small percentage of my life, and what I'm doing now is a far cry from what I was doing as a player. And as I mentioned, it's given me so much. I can't believe, even still now, even the game has given me plenty.
We'll go through all of that. I want to go through the career a little bit and into what you're doing now. But the first thing you just let me know that your little granddaughter, she's a redhead.
Yes, she is.
Which you don't see.
Not too many. No,
not too many, especially with an Aboriginal grandfather.
No.
With the complexion of the dark hair.
Yep.
And she's a little redhead.
Well, look, when I'm walking around the shops with her, people they have a double take. They look twice. You know, say, what's this fella doing with this little girl? You know, so you do get the looks, but it's one of those things, very, very rare. It is, but every now and again you're going to get somebody with red hair. I've got a sister. She's got red hair. And when I say red, like she's fiery red hair. And every now and again, it's her grandmother. Her grandmother's a strawberry blonde, you know, so she's got a bit of red in her hair.
As I was saying to you, my mum is a full redhead as well.
Yeah.
But my sister, my dad, he's same complexion as you, and then my sister looks nothing like mum. She's dark, curly hair, so it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
But you just tell me as well, your oldest fella,
Jaden, he's playing footy. He's taken up the kind of mantle, and he's having a run around with Burleigh and doing a bit of trialling with the Titans as well.
Well, he's been lucky. He kind of broke onto the scene a couple of years ago. So he played with the Colts for Burleigh. He was meant to play for them this year, but he captained them last year. And the year before, he had a few games with the Colts. And unfortunately, given the situation at the moment with COVID, they haven't been able to play too many games. And he hated it. He hated it, and he was just driving him mad. But he's back now playing with Burleigh, and Gold Coast Titans have got their eye on him at the moment. He's always been, one of those typical young boys that just loves rugby league. He grew up with it, obviously, with me with my career. But I might tell people, and this is, I did love rugby league, but he loves it so much more than what I did. And I think he's got the talent to be able to do it. And it's just a mental. He's got the right people around him. I'm thinking I try not to get too much into it. I just try to stay back as much as I can, because I know there are plenty of people out there in the system that are able to support him. And he's happy, and that's the main thing. I'll just figure if he needs something from me, he'll come see me.
I haven't seen him since he was probably 7 years old. They tell me he's taller than you.
Yeah, he's taller
than you.
Yeah.
But he's probably about same. He's a bit thin as well, and
I think at the moment he weighs in. I think I might be heavier than him, to be honest. He weighs in at about 76, 77 kilos, which isn't too bad. But in today's game, when you talk about today's game, that's still pretty light, pretty small. It was a lot easier when I first started back in 98. When I say easy, I mean it was still hard, but there wasn't this, you didn't need to be the biggest bloke on the field. And I played wing, I played fullback, so I was quite protected. But these days it's really, really hard to avoid that contact, And
what weight were you playing at back then?
Well, I debuted, I was about 62 kilos.
62.
Yeah, so
Wow.
And I tell people that, but it's not something that you even think about. Back then, it was weight wasn't a massive thing. Where today, there's so much around nutrition, there's so much about strength. Where back then, you can get by with your talent, and if you just had a big heart and got in and had a go, you were more than welcome in the game.
Can you believe some of the size of the wingers now, what they look like compared to, I've seen footage when you first started playing, as you said, 62 kilos, they're 105 now. Like, can you believe how much it's kind of changed in that short period of time?
Well, it's that thing, and I think the Broncos were one of the first clubs to bring that in. I remember facing up against Wendell Saylor. You had me up against Wendell, and then on the other side, you had another small bloke, Aaron. I can't remember Aaron's last name, but he was a little bit bigger than me, but he was up against Lottie Takiri, So you had two huge wingers against two smaller wingers. So I think that's where it first started to come in the late 90s, early 2000s, and it's changed so much. As it said, because of the game, it calls for those big wingers now. Not only can they jump, they're very athletic. They're big enough to take that first run from of the set and be effective. When smaller blokes these days are less effective, and that makes a big difference in the game. You really need a good start to that set, don't you?
But you always played above your weight, and people always talk about your heart and the kind of mental toughness you had to give away so many kilos and play against guys so much bigger than you. Was it ever a factor in your mind did you ever think about the kind of start you were giving away?
Oh, look, I was always nervous. It's really, really hard to get past that sort of stuff when, you get told a lot that you're small and in comparison to other players, So it's hard not to think about it. But, you try to rely so much on the work that you've done, and you believe in your ability. It's one of those things, and look, being a smaller player, I learnt instinct. get away from big plays, to find not easy ways, but better ways to be effective. So if I'm running the ball, instead of running straight at somebody, obviously I had to develop a step. So my agility is something I worked a lot on. So not just to avoid those tackles, but to be able to get into a position where I can, where I did get tackled, I can get up pretty quick, fairly quick. So being small is sometimes has its disadvantages, but I didn't try to look at it too much. As I mentioned, a built instinct, getting away from people, and you just become smarter, And it's one of those things that a lot of young boys and girls need to realise. I get asked a lot to talk to boys and girls that are really small and being told that they're too small to play rugby league. And what I say to them is just being small is good. You have an advantage. They need you on their team, but they need you to work hard. So work on your agility, work on the things that you're good at, but also work on the things that you're not real good at.
What about, I guess, the game now is changing a little bit and trying to get small players back into the game? I mean, you'd like to see that with some of the rule changes that they're trying to. They've realised that maybe, we need to drop the interchange. We need to have these set restarts and stuff like that to get these small guys back, because it's such an important part of the game. You'd like to see that. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, we can talk about the game. It needs to be exciting. I'll be honest, a lot of the games that you do get to see it's just the same thing over and over again, and there is an exciting moment within this game every now and again, but for the viewer, it's difficult to watch sometimes, I think, because they just want to see a chip over the top, and they want somebody to, risk, do a risky play, but it's just something that they can't really do. They talk a lot about 1%ers these days, and look, every now and again, like I said, you see this moment. Just one example was Ryan Pappenhausen last week when playing against the Knights. He got the ball and he ran almost 100 metres. And that's awesome. Small Blake, he's capable of doing that. Because of some of the rule changes, some of these guys that get really tired because they can't chase the kick, and it just opens it up for the boys, But I think the more they get used to these rules, the more we'll see of that.
One of my favourite players at the moment is Appy Coraceau, and he's playing so well for Penrith. And Penrith are firing at the moment. And the last time Penrith looked this good, you were in a Penrith jersey, and you guys went on to win the comp in 2003. I'm keen to know what you think of the Panthers this year from what you've seen. Yeah,
they're playing awesome. They got a lot of energy and they're just playing with confidence. I don't know what the average age is, but I think when we were playing, it was like 24. You had a couple of older blokes like myself, Ryan Girdler, Luke Prettis. But I think, the average was 23, 24 years of age, and it's not the same, the team now, because they just, their energy is just unbelievable, and as I mentioned, they're playing with a lot of confidence, but that and they're playing with a lot of belief in each other. Nathan Cleary's leading them around amazingly, and you got guys on the edge that are just willing to put their bodies on the line and very, very mobile. Back in 2003, we had two very mobile edge runners in Joey Nullivan and Tony Pulatua, so it's very similar in a way. But they're just there for each other, the Panthers, and they got the skill, and you got the right people leading at the moments that they need to lead. Appy Coraceau, as you mentioned, he's one of my favourite players to watch because he's not the biggest guy, and he has a go, but he's just a clever player. He's a real footballer.
What do you remember about 2003? It's probably a long time ago, but I vividly remember it because I was a Panthers fan, and I don't know, I can still name the whole 17 that played in that grand final. I can still, but can you remember much about that time? Because you guys kind of came from nowhere, didn't you? You weren't expected to to be a contender that year, were you?
No, not really. No, not really. I think they were sort of in a rebuilding stage. I think the year before they finished second last. The year before that they were wooden spooners. So there wasn't much expected, from the game in general, and then from the club. When you look at the community, the Penrith Panthers supporters, they were expecting a grand final win every year, premiership. But I think for myself personally, it was just one of those years where I was just wanting to get back into football, playing rugby league. The year before wasn't the best year for me, so I was just looking forward to playing football and getting back into playing NRL level. The year before, 2002, I spent majority of the time in the New South Wales Cup. So I worked really hard in off season to get a start, and I was lucky to get a start on the wing in the first game, and I was just ready to go. I wasn't expecting too much. I was just happy to be back playing NRL.
Do you remember the kind of high at the end of the year, the feeling of winning that premiership? Because you touched on before, the year before wasn't the best year of your life, and how quickly it turned around, and how, I guess, you must have been so elated with how it finished.
Oh, looking back now, it was amazing. It was an amazing feeling, and understand that I've been able to win a premiership. So many people hope to win a premiership, but never get that chance. I feel very fortunate to be able to do that. At the time, Jake, probably I didn't feel that euphoria. I was happy that we won, very, very happy that we won, but I didn't celebrate to the point where, I probably only following the team that night that didn't have a drink, So I was lapping all that up. I was enjoying the occasion, but I probably didn't appreciate it as much as I probably could have, given where I was in my life, personal life. As a rugby league player, it was an amazing feeling. But personally, I was wondering what's going to happen next, just around the corner. If you remember, 2001, I won a Dally M, and just around the corner, it wasn't real good. So I was a little bit worried about celebrating too much, because if I did, it might be taken away just as quick.
Well, I'll go into 2002 in a second, and I know you've spoken about it a lot, but just you didn't have a drink on the night. Have you ever drank? You've never? Have you?
Yeah, look, it's one of those things. Rugby league, it's really, really hard. It's not to drink. I'll come to the Gold Coast in the late 90s, not a drinker. I didn't touch the stuff, but because there was so much of it around, it was a big part of the culture of playing rugby league. There's almost some of the healthiest drinkers on the planet, rugby league players. So back then, compared to the end of my career, it was very, very different. So I got caught up in the culture, the drinking. I didn't drink a lot because I had a family I had to go home to, but it was just one of those things. I didn't see the. It was a bit of a novelty for me, I didn't see why people drank so much.
You don't drink now, do you?
No, I'm not a drinker now. No, I'm not a drinker now. But I'm not one of those fellas that judge people for drinking. I can go out. I can still go out and enjoy it and look after people. And I think in the beginning, it was just that bit of pressure. You got from your teammates, come on, have a drink. And I succumbed to that pressure. But the older I got, the less I wanted to drink, and I just, the more I said no, the more they respected that, So it's one of those things that, I don't know, a lot of people have to come to grips with. I'd never been a real big drinker, so I'm not missing much. Don't feel like I'm missing out on much.
No. How long has it been since you had a drink, you reckon?
Oh, geez, it's been a number of years now. Yeah, it's.
Just don't even think about it.
No, well, it's one of those things. It just becomes a habit.
Yeah.
When you don't have it, you just don't miss it. I guess.
You touched on before 2001 and when things went pear shape for you. And I know you have spoken about it a lot, so I don't want to get too bogged down in it because I think a lot of people do know your story. But for the people that don't, so obviously you're playing first grade. You won the Dally M medal, as you said, and you're at Cronulla, new coach, change of kind of system. You fall out of favour. You're out of first grade, and then things take a bit of a sour turn for you personally. Just, I guess, if people don't know what kind of happened in that period of your life.
Well, there's a bit of a snowball effect, Jakey, I think. 2001 was like a breakout year for me. Yeah, I played NRL in previous years, but that was the year that I'd probably become an household name. And I think a lot of my situation had to do with my ego as well. You know, this talk, this hype, Preston Campbell, how well he's going. I got caught up in that as well. But I think the biggest thing for me, and what people need to remember, just think, being told that you weren't going to be able to amount to anything, not just a game of rugby league, and always being told that you're too small and you're never going to do well. You know, so when you do well, and I don't think as an individual you can get any higher than the Dally M. You know, and I'm thinking, well, I've proven these people differently. You know, I hope they know that small people can, or smaller people, doesn't matter whether you come from the bush or not, can do well. And it was just a matter of, I guess, understanding that I could do well if I work hard enough and have belief in my ability. And I did that. And 2001 is just an amazing year. There was things that our team done that we probably never thought we could do, you know. And it was just one of those years that just went really, really quick. At the end of that year, 2001, Dally M Player of the Year. And then there was changes that come about. And I think the problems arose, again, because of my ego. And when I was told I wasn't going to play halfback, it made me feel like I wasn't good enough, you know. So, yeah, and then they had another halfback in Brett Camorley coming in. He was an amazing rugby league player and a really good fella, you know. But that's not what I was thinking at the time. What I was thinking is this fella's telling me I'm not good enough. And I'd been told that, you know, for a lot of my footy career. And that's what I found difficult. And that's what I struggled with most. And it was something that I made up in my head. There's nobody told me that I was not good enough, but that's what it felt like.
So that's weird. I don't know if I've ever heard you talk about ego before, and I think the last thing that people think about when they think about Preston Campbell is ego. Yeah. But that was something that was there for you. Yeah, I find that.
Oh, look, and it's one of those things. We all got an ego. It's just how we keep it under control, really. And at that time, I was a lot younger, less mature, and it did take over at times. And then having people in my ears telling me what I shouldn't be doing, you know, it was difficult. And I just wanted to get away from it all, you know. So that year wasn't the best year for me. I just walked around the club. I did what I needed to do. I actually got really fit. I worked really hard, and in the New South Wales Cup, we fell one game short of the grand final. You know, so we actually did all right, but I just didn't feel like playing footy.
Because I was going to say, like, Dally M Player of the Year, playing New South Wales Cup the next year, that mentally took a toll on you. Then
it did. I mean, and look, I played rugby league because I just didn't want people to really know what was going on, really how I felt. You know, I didn't want to play rugby league, but I did just because I had a contract and I was just rolling with the punches. You know, I did what I needed to do, but not actually wanting to do it. You know, and that was a struggle. You know, I think back now, you know, if I was actually going out and playing footy with purpose, because I did have an opportunity to play NRL that year. I played the first 7 or 8 games, 7 or 8 rounds at hooker, and I just didn't enjoy it. You know, I'm thinking if I went out with a different attitude, you know, went out different mental, it might have been different for me. But yeah, it just didn't work out that way. And like I said, it was a snowball effect there. the effect that footy had on me, I took it home. I took it into my relationships with my family and friends, and alienated my life basically. And it just, it was one of those times where, again, I learned so much from it now, but it's one of those times where I think a lot of people tend to get into and aren't able to find their way out of.
So when you said you alienated your family, that's when you had a breakdown in your relationship, and basically you decided at one point you didn't want to live anymore.
Yeah. And look, and that's unfortunately where a lot of situations like that end up, And for me, it was through the lack of understanding about why I was feeling the way I was feeling. And again, egos come into play because I'm feeling these certain feelings and not understanding why, and it just it made me more frustrated. It made me angrier. The fact I couldn't understand why I was crying, and why I was feeling like I wanted to punch walls in, So it was frustrating, and it just got a little bit too much, And that's what people talk about when they're in a situation like this. Things just become overwhelming, and they just want that feeling to stop, And unfortunately, that's a way that a lot of us, want that feeling to stop. So I thought, it'd be better off if I wasn't around. The world would be a much better place, and I just wanted these feelings to stop, and that was the only way I felt I can do it. Because there was no education or awareness around depression or anxiety in the game, in society in general. So after all of that had happened, I was diagnosed as being clinically depressed, and I didn't even know what that meant, And it wasn't until I sat down, understood what it was, I actually understood what I needed to do to be able to get past them feelings.
So yeah, that led to, I think multiple times you tried to take your life.
Yep. So my first attempt was in 2002. It was a few days before Christmas. As you mentioned, I had a breakup from my partner, and she'd left. We were in Penrith at the time. She moved up to Ballina with her parents. So I'd gone up a few days before Christmas to give to the young ones their gifts, presents, and I guess hoping that I could rekindle, a little fire. But once I got to Ballina, I just realised that I burnt that bridge with my partner, and that was it. If I couldn't be with her, if I couldn't be with my family, what's the point of playing footy? What's the point of being around anymore? Because they don't need me. Yeah. So 2002, I think it was the 23rd. I drove my car into a tree, hoping that I wouldn't wake up. And that was something that was difficult to tell people in the beginning because it's one of those things that is pretty raw. I still try to work out the best way to tell my story because some people, because it's so sensitive, some people just don't know how to take it. In the beginning, I thought, well, you just tell the story the way it was, you're going to be able to help more people. And that was the case. But I think there's a story I can tell that's less raw, a little more sensitive. That's also being able to help people. And that's just me. It's just been me being able to work out what kind of story, which way I tell the story, if that makes any sense. Yeah. But, after that first attempt, it didn't make anything better. It made things worse, if anything. I woke up in the hospital and just, I woke up in a helicopter thinking, you idiot, what are you doing? I just felt so stupid, And then by the time I got to the hospital, I was already thinking about ways to take my own life because, again, I just didn't want to be around.
And what happened from there after that?
So I spent 3 days in Lismore Base Hospital. Got a phone call from my cousin, lived in Nambucca Heads, and he said he was going to come pick me up, take me home. Went back to Penrith. They spent a week with me, and it was good. It was good them being with me and kind of just recovering from my injuries because I busted myself up a little bit. And then him and his little family left. Here I am in this house all alone again, So that was when I started to think about, when and how. So a few weeks have gone by. I'm doing my recovery, doing my training, and just one day, on a day off, I woke up and just started crying. Looked at the ceiling and I just started crying, and I sat up, looked on my bedside table, and there was these packets of painkillers. Obviously from the injury. Got up, walked up and down my aisle for hours. Would have felt like hours. And I'd gone back in, sat on the side of the bed, and I grabbed the tablet, threw it down. I grabbed another one and I threw it down. And I thought, this is it. I just couldn't stop. I got a knock on the door. And I thought, who the hell's this? I had no plans. And as I mentioned before, everybody that I knew, they just wasn't around, and I didn't want to be around people, so I had no idea who was at the door. So I left it for about 5 minutes, and then I threw another one down, and then knocked on the door again. And I don't know why I got up, and I went to the door and opened it up, and there's Johnny Lang standing at the door. I said, hey, coach. And he didn't say too much. He basically just went like that, and said, let's go for a ride. I was still in my pajamas and didn't ask any questions. I went and got changed, jumped in the car, and that was it. He drove me in to see a counsellor, see a psychologist. And it was one of those things I'd tell people that it was something that I needed internally. My body was saying that I needed it. And as soon as I sat down with the counsellor, first thing that she said, it was almost like she knew exactly what it was I was going through. And I arced up a little bit, and I said, how the hell do you know that? And it kind of made me, and I started crying again. And it was like like this warm flush. It was like a weight went off my shoulder. Yes, somebody knows how I feel, and that was the beginning. It wasn't like things just happened like that. It took me years, and it's still taking me times where I do have my worries, my stresses, but I'm able to manage it in a way that's more appropriate, more responsible around it. Yeah. Where back then I wasn't appropriate, wasn't responsible. If I felt mad, if I felt angry, I'd punch a hole in the wall, or I'd swear at somebody, and I just knew that. No, now what I was doing was just pushing people away.
I spoke to Joel Thompson. He said the same thing when on this podcast, but he said he went through when he first went and saw someone, and she said this woman just basically recited to him what kind of person he was without knowing him at all. And he just by what he told, like a few things, and he was like, how do you know that about me? And it's like this stuff is so common that they know, and they can tell you what's wrong with you, but so many people don't go and say, oh, this is what's going through my head. And I've seen you, I know I've heard that story a few times, and we've spoken about it a few times, but it never kind of ceases to amaze me, I guess, how open you are, but also, what you went through and how far you've come now. And that's where I kind of want to go is take it forward a bit now. Where you are in your life now, do you look back on that point in your life, and does it make you, I don't know, do you feel guilty? Do you feel angry that you maybe even might have robbed yourself of everything you have now?
I did in the early days, and it's just one of those things, acceptance is a massive thing. When you, I don't know if recover's the right word, or when you're coming back from something like that, and that's one thing that I was able to do over time, accept really what was going on and why, and the help of counsellors and the help of friends and family helped me understand that it is normal and it is very common. But forgiveness is another thing. It took me even longer to forgive myself for it. And there was a lot of times where I blamed so many other people, made excuses for other people, or made excuses for the way I was feeling, and I blamed so many other people for the way I was feeling. But and that was the thing that I felt most difficult to get past, and I needed to forgive myself for that, and I was able to do that, and I think it's half the reason why I do what I do now. Usually people go into something that they're passionate about, and it's usually something that they've experienced, and when we look more into mental health space or mental well-being space, it's something that it's pretty scary. It's a pretty scary space, but at the end of the day, the thing that got me through what I needed to go through was obviously understanding, but it was through conversation, talking, and that was my medicine, was talking, and it was just, it's one of those things that we don't realise as human beings. We yearn interaction, and one of the easiest ways to interact with somebody is talk. When we talk about Aboriginal, Torres Strait Islander people, connection is something that's so massive. It's whether it's connection with land and country, connection with the animals, and then connection with each other, and that's something that I was missing, that connection. And once I started to get that back, I started to feel stronger, and that's one thing at the end of the day that I've learnt that's so important in life. We need to be connected.
What about, you talk about connection and you tell your story to a lot of people, but what about telling your story to your own children? Like, how have you kind of approached that in the years when they've gotten old enough to kind of understand what you went through? I guess, was that more difficult?
Oh, look, I try not to talk too much. Like, even with my intermediate family, I'd never spoken to them ever about it. They understand that I've gone through something, but they don't know the story. The same as my kids. They don't know the story. They know I've been through something. They know it's important that if you're struggling, you do what Dad did and seek help. Yeah. But in the ways of telling my stories and how it actually all happened, no, we haven't sat down. It's just one of those things. I don't know if I'll ever tell them.
Yeah.
If they ask me, I'll share it with them. But if I have to hang on to it, I'll hang on to it. One of the strange things I think, 2013 is when I first came out and let people know exactly what had happened 11 years before. Only reason I come out is that we lost 2 young boys that was involved in the game, in the system, to suicide. And really I didn't know where it was going to go because I'd never told anyone my story. So I'll give it a go. I don't know how it's going to go, and where it's going to end up. But I started to tell my story, and they had one of those segments on the footy show about mental health, and after that show, my phone was blowing up, phone calls and messages. What the hell's going on? Are you okay? And I had to explain, no, this happened 11 years ago. Because nobody actually knew. Only a handful of people knew what I'd gone through, and not even my mum, my dad, my brothers and sisters knew that I went through what I went through.
Really? Oh, wow. I never knew that.
No, nobody knew. And because it was just something that I needed, I don't know, people don't need to know. I think that's the case for a lot of people that go through something like this and get through the other side. I was happy living my life and just doing, but you don't realise the impact, you don't realise how many people actually go through what you went through. I went through it and I just got on with life, but you don't realise how many people actually are struggling with anxiety, depression, and I guess in 2013 I realised the impact that my story had on the community and then on individuals. But you don't realise that because you just want to make sure you don't fall into that place again, and you just want to live your life, So, it's not something I ever thought I'd get into, But I know I enjoy it because there's that connection, I know how important that is.
want to go back a little bit further. I saw an interview recently. You sat down with Dino Witters.
Yeah.
There's a cousin of mine, and obviously I know a good friend of yours. And you spoke about when you were younger having an identity crisis. Yeah. When you grew up in Tingha, which is a small community. I don't know best way to describe it, but it's outside of Inverell, yeah. New South Wales, and a big Aboriginal community. But you spoke about not feeling like you're an Aboriginal man. You had an identity crisis and when you were young. And I guess it's a thing a lot of kids go through. It might not be being Aboriginal. It might be just people have identity crisis. Explain to me what that meant for you.
Look, we didn't have a TV in the house until I was about 11. So being out, we'd go hunting, we'd go swimming. And this is something that Aboriginal people done for years, but I didn't realise that at the time. But I guess once we did get a TV and I got to see what Aboriginal people did up north, that's what I thought I needed to do in order to be Aboriginal. But because we didn't have that sort of stuff, we didn't have that side of culture, the traditions, the ceremonies and the celebrations. In that way, I struggled to believe I was Aboriginal. And look, Tingha's one of those places, it's where there's a high population of welfare, and unfortunately, and that's something, I'm third generation welfare. I grew up with that, and it's something that when you're in it, you don't realise you're in it. It's something that it's all you know. You don't know anything else. And I was one of those fellas that, again, when I saw people drinking, they always ended up in a fight. There was a fight. There's these relationships that were just wrecked for years and years and years, You have family members that don't talk with each other, but if Aboriginal meant that I had to fight and drink and do drugs, I didn't want to do that, because I saw the damage that it did in our communities. And look, I was lucky to grow up with a family that, did go to church at one time. So I understood that people could get together, have a great time and not have to drink, Where, looking back now, I understand why people had to drink, had to do drugs. This is their way of dealing with the issues, with the stresses in their lives. But back then, as I mentioned, it's not something I wanted to do because it took my uncles and my aunties, at the end of the day. And that's something that still a lot of our communities don't understand. If somebody has a heart attack, they die of a heart attack. They don't die because they've been drinking, or they don't die because they've been doing drugs. They die because they had a heart attack. And that's something that, I hope that the mindset changes around. It's really, really difficult to talk to family about these issues, because if they don't understand and you're trying to help out, it's really, really hard.
Yeah.
Lateral violence is a big thing in our community, and it can turn quickly. But I know there's a lot of our mob out there that struggle, with their mental health. And then, they lost connection somewhere. Whether it's with something or with the land or whatever it is, they lost connection somewhere. And the only way they feel like they can get through it, anything they can connect with, or only way they can connect with people is when they're drinking, is when they're on drugs, unfortunately.
I want to get to the work you've done in the community and the way you're trying to change those cycles for Indigenous people in just a sec. But I also want to just quickly touch on Tingha as a community. Has its issues, but it's produced some footballers.
Oh, yeah.
Well.
Yeah.
So Nathan Blacklock, Bevan French, yourself, like for a tiny little community, and there's a lot of Indigenous communities that have some pretty unreal footballers, don't they?
Yeah. Look, you have places like Toomala too. It just has this, and Moree, it just has this this stable of just talent. You look at your McGrady's, for an example, it's just an amazing pool of talent. But Tingha in particular, we were lucky to grow up with rugby league. That's all it was. And that's what everybody associated with. And again, we talk about connection and having something that's common in our communities. Well, rugby league is one of those things, and for most of it, it's very, very positive celebration. It's a very positive gathering, depending on if you win or lose. Some of those bush football, it can get a bit wild, but it means a lot. It means a lot to our communities, rugby league. And I think you don't realise, like you love playing it, you like representing your community, but you don't realise that you could actually make a living from it. Growing up in a place like Tingha, you don't realise that until somebody like Owen Craigie goes away and tries to forge a career in rugby league. Owie was really the first bloke that set the bar, Owie. He went to Newcastle. He played for Newcastle, 97, and won a grand final, And not too long after that, fellas like Nathan Blacklock and Peter Ellis went to the Roosters. Both played in the NRL, both very successful in the NRL. Then you have people like myself. He went down, and then you have Bevan French. So Tingha's one of those places that always had like talented rugby league players. My uncles, my cousins, they could all play football. But it's just the opportunity and understand and realising that you can leave Tingha and be a professional sports person. Until you get out of the place, you don't realise what opportunities are for you out there. And it's one of those things, I guess, rugby league's given me so much. It's given boys like Owie and Nathan plenty. But it's just one of those things that I guess not a lot of people in Tingha actually see, if that makes any sense. I mean, there's plenty of opportunities around. Even when I was living in Tingha, there's plenty of work opportunities around there, but you can't see it. You can't see it whilst you're there, living in that situation.
I think the first time I ever saw you in person was at a Koori knockout, and you were playing for Tingha.
Yeah.
And you would have still been playing, obviously, first grade then. And what amazed me is just the kind of the people that were around you, the amount of people that came up to say hello, to get photos, kids. Like, you just were never alone at any point. And then I remember seeing you over the years that you go and watch your son play for Helensvale in the junior league, and there was always people around you asking for your time. And I know that's a common thing for athletes, but you're kind of known as someone who's always so humble, always so patient, and has so much time for people. And where does that come from?
Again, we talk about connection. It's about giving people time. Sometimes it's just allowing people to do what they need to do, if that makes any sense. Somebody wants to tell you, something about their lives, and it's about just taking that time. It's been a lot easier for me, and it's one of those things, I guess, understanding that if that's something that you avoid, people look at you at a different light. I'll come through the game where some pretty famous people, celebrity was a big thing, and I saw these celebrities that didn't take the time, that didn't sign autographs, that didn't stop to say hello or didn't stop to take photos, and people just didn't like them, and they hid away from the footy world. And when they did come out, it was like the rarest animal on earth. They get swarmed, and I thought early on, if I just was out in community doing the stuff that needed to be doing, I'd just become part of the community, and people respect you for that. And it has. I mean, I've just become part of the furniture. The more I spent out there, the more people got used to me. And, somebody says, oh, look, there's Preston Campbell over there. The person next to him say, oh, yeah, he's out all the time, and I just get left alone.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where if I'm in the room or if I'm at home and I go out rarely, oh, there's Preston Campbell, let's go over and see him. You know, so like it still happens. I still have people come up yarning, wanting photos and autographs, but not as much as I did when I first shot onto the scene. You know what I mean? So it goes away. It goes away, but I've been able to handle it. I've been able to deal with it in where other fellas couldn't. You know, and again, to be able to deal with that sort of stuff, people drank and they did drugs. You know, but I've found if I just connected with the footy fans or the footy world, it'd be so much easier. And I didn't need drinking. I didn't need drink to be able to connect with them.
Tell me about your kill 'em with kindness mantra, because I spoke to Cody Walker recently on this podcast, and he said he's speaking about what an inspiration you were to him, and how he spoke about when you were coming through, you know, you had to kill 'em with kindness. You had to be nice in a world that might not have been nice to you, just to kind of change people's attitudes. And I remember a conversation I had with my mum one day. I was feeling a bit disillusioned with work and just kind of, you know, because I work in the media, and that can be it can be an ugly industry at times. And I remember feeling a bit disillusioned a couple of years ago, and I was telling Mum about it, and she goes, I ran into Preston last week, and I at work, and I was telling him, and Preston said to me, he said something, and it's something that stuck with me. You said, well, you can't change it from the outside, can you? So, you know, stay in the inside, be different. Yeah. Be the difference that you want to see. And that's really stuck with me. That's something you've always kind of pushed on, and I imagine it would have been hard for you to be kind sometimes.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it's one of those things that, and look, how we respond to things is very, very important. Yeah, and I always go back to 2002 or 2001 when I had that conversation with Chris Anderson. You know, things could have been so much more different if I'd have took that in a more appropriate way. You know, it's one of those things that I've learnt over time to...
Just for people that don't know, so Chris Anderson was coach of the Sharks, and he was the one who moved you out of position, and the conversation kind of went along the lines of how, what was said.
Well, so we were at Coogee. He was coaching Australia at the time. I went in, sat in the cafe, and his specific words, like the exact words were, we just signed Brett Kamali, you're going to be playing hooker. You know, and that's the way it went. After that, it just went quiet for me. Everything else said after that was, well, I didn't hear it, really. So it was Chris Anderson, but it's one of those things, like Chris and I, we met, it was actually the first All-Stars. I caught up with Chris again, you know, and I actually went up to Chris and I said, thank you. Thank you for helping me realise what rugby league's about. It's a team sport, and thank you for reminding me of that. You know, and it was one of those things, and he actually said, mate, it was nothing personal, you know, and back then it felt personal. He said, I come in, I got paid, my job was to win premierships, and that was the best way I thought we could win a premiership, you know. You weren't ready to be halfback. You got a bloke here that's experienced. He's won a competition. He's played for New South Wales and Australia, and he was a bloke that I thought could help us get that premiership. And I totally understood all of that. Yeah. You know, so Chris and I hope to think or feel that we're good. You know, I see him all the time. We have a good yarn. You know, he's a good follower, and I realise that. Back then, I hated him. You know, but it wasn't until you get to understand why people do what they do, is that you can understand why they did it. You know, and I accepted that. You know, I accepted that. But it was just, sorry, what were we talking about?
No, we were talking about killing them kindness. So you've gone from that to now a person that I think is, even before this conversation started, we were talking about how you try to understand the opinion of people like Pauline Hanson, Andrew Bolt, people that disagree with you fundamentally on pretty much everything.
Yeah.
And kind of stand for the things you fight against, but you still try to see their perspective. You still try to understand it.
Yeah, man, look,
you've come so far.
I think that's something that helps me also. And look, it's easy for people to get angry, and I can totally understand why they're angry. And for a big part of it, they should be angry, you know. And there are times where, and it doesn't mean I don't get angry. It's just the way I deal with it, the way I handle it. You know, you can get angry and you could respond in a way that's not appropriate, you know. So, I have my own rules that I set for myself, you know, and one of those rules is you can't change somebody's view on you in 5 minutes. So there's no point in yelling and screaming, trying to justify who you are, you know, and trying to justify why you do what you do. People that they've got their view, their opinion of you, and it's been growing for years. So you're not going to change their view on you in 5 minutes. So save your energy, you know, save your breath. And it's just one of those things I've learnt over time to respect people's views and their opinions, whether it's about me or about our issues. Yep. It's not my responsibility to educate them. Oh, sorry, it is my responsibility to educate them, but I'm not going to be able to do it in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, so killing with kindness was where it's a journey. Spending enough time with somebody and just talking to them and helping them realise why I do what I do, helping them realise why Indigenous people do what they do. You know, and more often than not, they start to understand why our mob is so incarcerated and why our mob, our health or our lives are cut so short, you know. And then people generally, and look, I think for most of us as human beings, we want to help people, you know. And when you understand why people go through what they do, you start to feel, is it empathy or sympathy? Sympathy. So you start to feel sympathetic and you want to help out where you can. You know, so I live by a few principles, and it's a brother boy from Milroy man from Tamworth. He talks about respect, responsibility, and reciprocity. You know, and these things that work with each other. Not one comes before another. It's hard to explain, but at the end of the day,
yep.
Respect is something that I'll always give, whether I get it or not, in return. So that reciprocity, even if I don't get that respect, I have to respect somebody, you know, because after a while, the more I keep respecting them, they'll start to respect me, you know, kill them with kindness. And it's just that responsibility. Again, there are certain things I'm responsible for. I'm not going to stand and talk to somebody about who we are and why I do what I do. You know, that's not my responsibility. For me, it's a longer journey. Because we don't talk enough about these. When we talk about culture in Indigenous world. You know, we talk a lot about our traditions, our customs, but we don't talk about that enough. You know, respect, responsibility was a big part of our culture, who we are. You know, we respected the land, we respected each other, and we're responsible for the land, responsible for each other. But where a lot's been missing now is that reciprocity. You know, we give so much to each other, but we don't. We take so much from each other, but we don't give enough. You know, and that's something that, again, I talk about connection. That's what real connection is: respect, responsibility, and reciprocity. So that exchange of energy or exchange of whatever it is, you know, the exchange or the balance of give and take. You know, so I've found that no matter what level I'm working at or what level of rugby league I'm playing, I've played local football. And, you know, I didn't have any problems playing rugby league. You know, because I respected the game so much, I respected my opposition so much. You know, I'd have people from the other side calling me all sorts of names. Even people from their teammates are saying, "Mate, don't say that to him. That's not, you know, don't treat him like that." But if they called somebody else the same thing, they'd be joining them. But because I respected him, he respected me. You know, and it was one of those things that I always carry. You know, something that I always lived with after I went through what I went through. Because there was no respect, there was no responsibility when I was going through what I was going through. There was no respect before that, no responsibility before that. So I understand all of that now, why it's important. And this concept of, like, I'll only respect you if you respect me, that's a cop-out. because if you don't respect me, I'll respect you only when you respect me, and it's vice versa. We're never going to respect each other, So if we need to teach people how to respect.
That's an amazing mantra, yeah, and I think you're right. A lot of people need to follow that, and the world would be a better
I
place.
can understand why that.
But absolutely, and it comes back to what you said before about ego and all these things. People don't. Yeah. It's human nature.
Yeah.
To be angry.
And it's not something. And I tell people, anger, frustration, being mad, it's all normal stuff. I'm not saying don't do it. It's just how you respond to that. It's how you manage it. And unfortunately, we see a lot of our young boys and girls in jails or being suspended or expelled because somebody's called them something, offended them and hurt them, made them angry, and they've responded in a way that's not good for them. So they'll punch them or whatever. They'll be there having a yelling match. It's not the way to do it, And I've been able to work up this, I don't know if you want to call it strength, because I still cop it. I still cop it from community, where you don't brush it off. Like, it still hurts. It doesn't mean it doesn't hurt. It's just the way you deal with it that makes a massive difference, And I've been able to gain respect for that because people have seen me cop rubbish, But when you just keep going, you tend to get people on your side because they know sometimes it's not the right thing to do to call somebody that name or to treat somebody like that.
Yeah, I take my hat off to you the way you've kind of adopted that mantra. It must have been tough at times to let those things go by. And I know a lot of people don't.
Yeah.
We'll move on to the part of your career where you moved to the Titans, and obviously you had success there. You almost got to the grand final, as you said before, but I think off the field, is it fair to say the Titans is where you really took what you were doing off the field to another level, where you started to get involved with the community arm, started pushing a lot of the things, and that's I guess the reason we know each other is because of a program you're involved with, the Titans,
Yep.
Titans for Tomorrow at the time, and it got me a cadetship when I was first starting out, and that helped me get my job where I am now and what I'm doing now. So, and you've had that effect on a lot of kids. Tell me how, I guess, where it started at the Titans, what you started to do, and how you started to use the club, I guess, to achieve some of these goals that you had.
I think you find that this sort of stuff happens in most clubs, but to the level the Gold Coast Titans were doing it at the time, I don't think there is anybody doing it. And look, it's because of the club allowing that to happen and allowing that to grow organically was amazing. They offered a platform to, or they joined the conversation around Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander issues. So whether it was young kids struggling to get through school and finish school and then move on to other opportunities after school, or whether it was stuff around mental health, they were always open to support that. And I think that was the biggest things, one of the more important things with community stuff, is that the club actually, they were passionate about it as well. And that's why, people like Michael Sell, I know there's a lot spoken about Michael Sell, but he was a guy that changed so much, or changed the face of community stuff in rugby league clubs, but he's changed so much throughout the game as well. So he's a forward thinker, but he was also very, very passionate about the people. The people. When I say people, the players, the people at the clubs, and the supporters. So it was easy to do work at the Titans because they allowed it and they were very, very open to it.
What about then?
And they wanted to understand. They wanted to understand why we did the things we did. Yeah. And then once they understood the importance of it. And that's why they were so supportive.
Yeah, and obviously they did a lot of great work, and it's kind of launched into what you do now with your own foundation. Tell me about the Preston Campbell Foundation and what the goal for you guys is. Well,
I guess it's just a part of my journey. I'd never ever thought I'd I'd have a foundation that was named after me. You know, it's not something that you dream of doing, but after everything that happened at the Gold Coast, you know, the community arm of the club at the time, T for T, sort of fell away. You know, so I needed a job. You know, I needed to do something, and I decided, you know, I'm going to stay in community. It's just about how that looks. You know, so that's where the foundation come from. We knew that T for T wasn't going to be around, so we needed to build something to build on the work that we'd already been doing. Yeah, and it didn't work out the way we wanted to. We got a foundation, and we're doing things. It's almost like we have no idea what we're doing, and sometimes it feels like that. But I know we enjoy what we're doing, and look, I don't even know what it is what we do. All I know is that we try to get out in community and, you know, listen to their needs. And it's one of those things. The foundation is not about building new things. It's about going out and supporting the things that are already going well in community. You know, so we want the Preston Campbell Foundation to add value to what is already going on out there, because there's some amazing stuff, and I think sometimes that's what we forget. We don't stop to celebrate the great things that we're doing. There's a lot of, you know, there's this narrative, all this negative stuff that's going on. We don't stop to celebrate the good things that we're doing. You know, and we don't have to be massive. If we've got our own little things going on here and there, you know, we're doing a great job. You know, it's one of those things that, I don't know, whether you want to call it the Western mentality, you know, the bigger they are, the more successful you are. We're more successful when we're doing things together.
And you were telling me before, but it's as well just about trying to get young kids to kind of to see, you know, they might not want to work in hospitality, they might want to, but to kind of give them a direction as well, and to try and kind of foster that motion, because you've had that in your life. You said, when you finish school, you're on welfare, and you didn't, you know, once you finish rugby league, you didn't know what you were going to do. Like, it's all about giving some young kids direction and trying to help them.
Yeah, giving them an option. And look, it might not work out the first time, but it's about the path, I guess. You know, them going into study, or whether they want to do an hospitality course, whatever it is they want to be. They might not have an idea, but it helps them come up with something. At the end of the day, they need to do something. You know, my dad said to me when I left community, he said, if you want to stay in the community, that's fine, but you need to contribute to the community. You need to be of benefit to the community. If you go away, you need to do the same thing. You need to be a benefit to that community. You have to make a contribution. And if that contribution means staying out of trouble, well, you benefit to the community, you know. And for a lot of our communities, there's nobody, we don't understand that. And again, for a lot of them, they don't understand the world that they're living in. You know, this welfare world is one that a lot of us are comfortable with. And look, it doesn't cause any harm, but it's unhealthy, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? One of the best things in Tinga, just to go back on that, was the CDP. You know, and I know it was work for the whole program, but at least the mob felt like they were contributing to the community. They worked alongside each other, and they were so proud of it. You know, the effect that they had on each other, the fact that they were working with each other and making their community beautiful. It was a great program for AIM. I know it was work for the Dole program, but it was something that's missing from Tinga. You know, now they still get paid, but nothing gets done in Tinga.
No working, yeah. Just something, it's a complicated issue that a lot of people have tried to figure out over the years, and
like it's not. And look, the CDP is not a bad. I mean, being on welfare is not bad. People need it. And you know, there was a time I needed it. You know, and I was very, very thankful for that. But for a lot of people, we can't get comfortable. We can't get comfortable with it, because I look at Tinga. There's so much potential there. There is. There's amazing potential, not just in sport, but now that I left the place, I look back there and there's so much they can do. You know, so much benefit for the community. It's just a matter of, I don't know, people in the community wanting the same thing.
Yeah, that's not just Tinga. There's a lot of communities all around Australia.
And that's one thing that I've found travelling.
Yeah.
And you know too.
Yeah, and you've been around everywhere. What about your other legacy, mate? We were talking about Indigenous round last week, but the All-Stars, and we sat down with Josh Adokar and Cody Walker, and they spoke about the All-Stars and what it means to them and how it's given such an identity to Indigenous players, Māori players in the game now. And you must just be so proud when you look at it that you were the driving force behind that, and it's now 10 years old.
Yeah, look, it's come a long way. And again, it's one of those things that has sort of evolved over time, because All Stars in the beginning was about inspiring, and I know it still inspires people. It was an opportunity for the boys to get together and represent their community and inspire our community, but more's come from it now. There's more awareness, education around Indigenous people, and the Māoris are involved now, so where it's come to, the inspiration and the opportunities and the potential, it's in a really good space. The thing that I'm most happy about is non-Indigenous Australia are getting on board. And it's one of those things that I think a lot of us would hope would happen, and it is. It's starting to do that. And again, it's a long journey, killing people with kindness, allowing them an opportunity to understand who we are. And again, it's taken some time, but people are starting to come around. They're supportive of what we're doing, given where it was in the beginning. Like All Stars maybe couldn't have happened, but where it's at now, it's in the calendar, and I think it's going to be around for a long time. And what the game's been able to do is amazing. And they've offered us a voice, and we need to respect that. We respect it by getting out and being good advertisements for the game. Because the game's just going to keeps giving me stuff. I'll keep going out and preaching the word around everything that I do, and why I do it. And it's just one of those things that's constant, because again, I love what I do, but I respect what I do.
It keeps giving me stuff too, and you're right. There's been so much change in the last 10 years, and when I was speaking to those guys last week about Indigenous round, it's more now not just about celebrating talent of Indigenous players or the Māori players. It's more about now, what do they have to say? What do we want to hear? What does the greater Australian public need to know about us so we can all move forward? And
it lends a voice. And we do need to be careful. And we talk about those Andrew Bolts and those Pauline Ansons. Non-Indigenous people think of us as that way as well. Look at these fellas. You wish they just shut up. So we have to tell our story in a way that is appropriate, and it's not. It doesn't look like we want to bite too much, take too much of a chunk out, if that makes sense. It's one of those things that, and that's one thing that it took me a while to understand. If you want somebody to listen to you, it's going to take time. You got to get to know them. They got to get to know us. Once that relationship's built and it's a bit stronger, and that way you start talking about the issues that we've been talking about. And it has come a long way. The game's lent its platform, or it's given a voice to so many different issues. Indigenous issues, issues around mental health, domestic violence, same-sex relationships. And we need to respect that, because they're actually putting a lot on the line, the game. They're giving us this opportunity. So we need to understand that we need to be appropriate about some of the things that we say. But in saying that, you need the hard-hitting stuff too. I look at Latrell and what he went through last year, and the support that the game give him compared to Adam Goods.
Adam Goods, yeah.
Latrell's still playing. Adam didn't feel like he wanted to play there anymore. He got his support
And the
from
AFL admitted they got it wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, the club supported him.
Yeah.
But the game didn't.
Yeah, the game didn't.
You know,
Yeah, absolutely.
Something that he loved didn't love him back. Where I felt that looking at it from a distance, Latrell got that support from the game, you know. And he seems like he's happier now. And look, there was times where, you know, I felt angry because of the stuff in the news, whether it was radio or in the paper, they were just smashing Latrell, you know, because this is a man that was, you know, strong about who he is. And people just didn't like the way he was talking. They thought he was a goose, you know. When was it? Was it a tweet or something on Instagram?
Instagram, I think, yeah.
Somebody break his neck or something like that.
Yeah, there's been some horrible stuff.
And I won't name names, but it was a radio presenter asked the question, you know, is he just being a sook? Does he need to wake up? So I'm pretty sure you know what I'm talking about. And my first thought with that was, this fella's not qualified to ask this question. And he did actually say, this is one person. He doesn't know if it was one person, you know. He doesn't know Latrell's situation. He doesn't know how much he's been copping, you know. So to ask a question like that, he's not qualified there. Only fella that's qualified to answer it is Latrell. We don't know what he's been through. And that for me, just told the whole story and that situation. You know, Latrell handled it in a way that was appropriate, but everybody else around him made it difficult for him, didn't they? And I did feel for him. I'm glad he's still playing the game. And fellas like Cody, we need people because they are strong in their identity and they bring these issues to the forefront, you know. And,
absolutely. And
again, I went a long way about saying it, but it's the game that's allowing these boys an opportunity to say the things that mean so much to them.
We do hope to get Latrell on one day to talk about these things and everything he's been through. And Preston, I could speak to you all day, mate, because it's just always so interesting and such an important chat that needs to be had. But I know you've got your grandchild, and we're kind of keeping him out of the house. So we're just finished real quick on. We like to ask a couple of quick questions and some fun questions, and see what comes to your head. And I think I know the answer to this first question, but the first one is the most famous person you've ever met.
Famous person?
Yeah.
Ooh. I don't know. There's some very famous.
I think I know, and I think you've met the Queen, haven't you?
Yeah, but I don't know if she's the most famous.
Really?
Yeah.
How can
she'd probably be the most famous.
How are you going to top the Queen?
I don't know. Would David Beckham be up there?
Oh,
England?
Yeah.
Muhammad Ali?
You met Muhammad Ali?
Yeah,
You're
freaky.
kidding. Really?
It's freaky, man. I don't tell too many people the
I could
story.
do a whole podcast on this.
But he's 2012. Myself and Mark DeWitt went to England. So the NRL were actually up for an award for work in community, and we went over to represent the game. And it was just before the Olympics, and they had this conference called Beyond Sport, which was basically using sport to make change. So we were part of this conference over a few days, but on the last night, they had the awards night, and guys like David Beckham, Muhammad Ali was there, Michael Johnson was there, Francois Pienaar,
wow.
Jamie Oliver. So there were some amazing people there. So to be able to shake their hands, and obviously somebody like Muhammad Ali who could barely talk. Like I just remember there's this feeling. They were talking about this person and what he'd done as a sports person and what he's doing in the community. And I kind of knew it was Muhammad Ali. And then the next minute he's come out, and it was just an amazing feeling. So to be able to just to say hello to him was a great feeling, you know. So I don't know, probably the Queen.
Probably the Queen.
I got a funny story about the Queen though. It's like I like my tea.
Your tea,
yeah. Stand in front of us. You know, when you put sugar in and you sort of stir it up, but you click the sides.
Yeah.
And I got this look from the Queen because I was making a lot of noise. It was almost like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, then I started to stir it really, really slow. But I don't know. Let's say the Queen.
Look, That Queen's hard to top, but I didn't know you met Muhammad Ali.
Yeah, man, he's awesome.
That's pretty amazing. And yeah, David Beckham as well.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, you could do a whole podcast on those guys alone. Well, I was going to ask the most famous or random person you ever saw in a football locker room.
Oh, famous.
People love to come into the locker rooms. You get the odd kind of...
Mark Okalupo.
Oh, yeah.
Being on the Gold Coast, you got a lot of surfers.
A lot of surfers coming. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so Parko was there. It's probably most random would be Mark Okalupo.
I spoke to Kieran Jack, the former Swans captain, and he said once the Dalai Lama came in.
Oh, really?
The Swan,
Lama?
Yeah, the Swan shit.
Well, actually, before All Stars, Kevin Rudd come into the dressing shed.
Okay, Rudd, yeah.
Yeah, I was half naked and he wanted to shake my hand.
Oh. Was he PM then? Or?
He was Prime Minister at the time. Yeah, so he came in. Yeah, Yeah, okay. Mark Okalupo, probably in
surfers.
Yeah.
What about
most memorable?
What about superstitions, mate? Did you have any as a player? Did you have any weird ones that your teammates saw?
No weird ones. My thing was on game day was just made sure I ate my muesli, my oats, porridge
every morning.
Yeah, so it could be in the middle of summer. I had to eat my porridge. Yeah, so that was the only thing. Game day situation. Nothing, no superstitions.
No, because we've had some weird ones. Kieran Jack told me about one of their guys in their team who had to brush his teeth right before they ran on.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so he was in the huddle and he's brushing his teeth just before he about to run on. Josh Adokar has about 1 million.
Really?
He's got a left side all strapped first, then right side, can't put his boots on first, has to put his jersey on after Kenny Bromwich.
Really?
All these weird ones.
That's too much to remember.
Yeah, I know. What about your worst habit?
You can ask my missus that one. Picking my nose. Yeah, picking my nose.
Well, this is something you've always done.
My nose, I get a lot of. I got a bit of hair in my nose, so it's probably not picking. It's just a bit of a scratch, and I break it 1 year. I can't remember what year it was, but part of it has gone across and blocked it off, so it's just uncomfortable. I just stick my finger up there to move it around a little bit.
What about? This is probably hard to top considering the people you have met, but if you had 3 dinner guests off the top of your head, who would that be?
Yeah, that's a hard one. I'd like to spend more time with my grandfather on my dad's side. I hear a lot about him, and when I did know him, I was too young to sort of appreciate it. Mm-hmm. Would be nice for him to sit down with him. Nelson Mandela.
Yeah.
I just his principles. It'd be just good to have a look at what sort of stuff that he, why he thought he did, the way he did.
Mm-hmm.
That's a hard one. I might have to get somebody that's living.
Yeah, that's
Was there 3? It is difficult
3,
because it's...
If you got someone who's currently alive.
I don't know. That is a hard one. I know Nelson Mandela and my grandfather are definitely 2 that I love at the dinner table.
The fact that you met Muhammad Ali and you met the Queen, that's probably...
Yeah.
That's more than most people get in a lifetime. What about, did you have someone you hated playing against? Was there a particular player that you just looked at and said, I don't want to play against him today? Or
well, anybody that was bigger than me. Wendell was one of those fellas.
Yeah.
It's funny, the first time I played against Wendell, I think he just fell over for me a few times. I grabbed him around the ankles, he just fell over. But somebody like him, I hated him because he was so big and he was so difficult to bring down. I never hated anybody I played against. Like I said before, I always respected them, but in the ways of somebody that had great ability and been on the wing, Wendell Saylor. Hard. He was hard. And anybody in the Warriors team in the late 90s, early 2000s, because they were so big.
Yeah. So big, giving away 40, 50 kilos.
Yeah.
Just finally, mate, what are you most proud of? Everything you've done in your career after footy, what stands out most for Preston Campbell?
Just my family, I guess, being able to stay with them. And, and just keep doing the work that I'm doing. You know, I'd like to think that I'm level-headed and I'm grounded. So I'm happy after having a career like I did, and that I'm still able to do what I do at the level that I do. You know, I'm just glad that I'm still grounded. But that's because of family and the friends that I have around me. Yes, and family's always been important to me, and it's something that I guess at the end of the day is most important. Yeah. So I'm proud of my family.
That's a great answer, and I think a great note to finish on, Presto. Thanks for your time, mate. You're always so giving with it, and I know a lot of people have asked us to get you on. So, you know, you're an inspiration to a lot of people, mate. So I think always a great chat, and I think a lot of people will really enjoy listening to that. So thanks for your time.
My pleasure, mate. We'll have to do this again soon,
mate. Always. Thank you. Thanks for having me in your home.
No worries, Jakey.
Thanks for listening, guys. We've got plenty more episodes coming your way very soon. Don't forget to follow the Refuse to Lose podcast on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We look forward to talking to you again soon.